F1 is back after the summer break with the drivers and teams heading to the classic Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Coming up, will Red Bull continue their winning run, or can Ferrari land a blow in a title battle that is ready to fall from their fingertips? Who will be on the Spa struggle bus this weekend? And I fill the empty seats on the 2023 grid. Welcome back to the show then, everyone. It's been a little while without some Formula 1 action, and we will get back to the track this weekend in Spa, although we did say that last year and we ended up with a washout and, you know, a lot of frustration because obviously we didn't actually get a race, although they did call it a race. So who knows what we're in store for this weekend in Spa. It does have a knack for throwing up the unexpected. We've had multiple car pile-ups there. We've had random winners. We've had lots of things happen in Spa over the years. But it's been good to have a bit of a break from this really hectic and compacted season because of the Football World Cup happening in Qatar at the end of the year, so they're not wanting to clash with that. So I hope you, like me, are ready for 9 races in 13 weekends, that's quite an effort. I mean, it's going to be quite draining for us just watching it. Imagine if you're one of the people in the paddock flying to all these different places, working, and the mechanics are going to have a hell of a task on their hands to keep themselves primed and ready, and to the drivers, but they obviously are in exceptional condition in terms of fitness, much fitter than I am, that's for sure. So where were we? Well, Max Verstappen is running away with this championship all the way to his second World Championship with 8 wins from the first 13 races ahead of the summer break. The Dutchman leads the way by a massive 80 points, having trailed Charles Leclerc by something like 46 points when they left Australia. The Dutchman had 2 DNFs to his name after the third round of the season, and look at how things have turned around. But Ferrari have been making a mess of things since returning to Europe. There was mistakes from Sainz and Leclerc in Imola, the devastating failures in Spain and Azerbaijan for Leclerc, although Sainz had a breakdown in Austria and in Azerbaijan as well. The strategical catastrophes in Monaco, Britain and Hungary. Leclerc also making that error in France. So it means that Ferrari, who were in possession of the fastest car this year, are closer to Mercedes than they are to Red Bull in both championships, which kind of sums it all up for Ferrari because they've been on pole position more than anybody else. In Leclerc, they've got someone driving brilliantly, flawed brilliance, but still genuine brilliance. And yet, this is a championship that's very quickly got away from them. And yes, there's 9 races to go, and a lot can happen in Formula 1, but it's very difficult to see an 80-point advantage being eradicated and overturned successfully, because you'd need quite the carnage to unfold over the next few races. But that's not the only place where there's been drama, and we thought, well, we'd get a quiet summer break. But no, the first couple of weeks were dominated by the fact that no one seems to want to drive for Alpine, and poor Esteban Ocon, whether he likes it or not, is under lock and key with a contract that takes him to 2024. After Sebastian Vettel announced his retirement at the end of the season, Fernando Alonso was quickly confirmed as the German's replacement at Aston Martin, which was a massive surprise. And that surely meant that Oscar Piastri was going to get his chance in F1 at Alpine. Well, Alpine thought that, and their statement on Piastri's promotion was suspiciously lacking any words from the Australian. And then Piastri then denied that he'd signed a deal yet, or at all, and would not be racing for Alpine in 2023. The French team are adamant that Piastri will be in their car next year, and this story is going to rumble on into the courts. Now, we know that, well, we think we know that Piastri is in talks with McLaren, and they're in this similar situation over in IndyCar with Alex Palou, the reigning IndyCar champion. So, they've not put their name to this one just yet. So we'll wait and see how both of those situations unfold. And of course, there's 9 races left for Sebastian Vettel in his highly successful career. 53 wins, 4 World Championships, make Vettel one of the greats, but the emergence of a small operational window through the following years after his 4th title triumph have seen his form and results deteriorate. But now that the 35-year-old has put an end date on his career, we should use the final 9 races to put aside our judgments on his skills and his operation and just enjoy the final flings of one of the very best of the last 15 years, whether you were a Sebastian Vettel fan or not. I mean, I personally don't count myself as a Sebastian Vettel fan, but if you are a Formula 1 fan, you should always be able to appreciate the qualities of every driver. And the fact that they can all do something that I can't do makes them a lot better than me. So let's look ahead to F1's return at Spa-Francorchamps, one of the classic circuits, one of my favourites. I absolutely love F1 at Spa, which was kind of, it was even more galling that we didn't get a race there last year. And a wet race in Spa is just fantastic. My first F1 memory is the 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. So, that was quite the baptism to Formula 1. But obviously we had a wet race in 2008 where it started a bit wet and it finished with some rain, and there was all the controversy over Hamilton and Raikkonen at the final chicane. We've had other wet races there too, so it's always likely to throw up a wet race because of where it is in the world, in the Ardennes Forest. But its layout is just majestic. It's 7 kilometres of bravery and speed and commitment, and it really sorts the drivers out in terms of who's willing to be brave and who can extract the very most from their car, because you have to balance the car in terms of the need for straight line speed through Sector 1 and Sector 3, but you need a car that's good on the brakes, so you need the downforce there, but you also need to carry good speed through the middle sector, because if you're losing too much time through corners like Rivage, where it's a downhill right-hander, you're going to slide a little bit wide. You're not going to have traction. Pouhon is a phenomenal corner. It's just balls to the wall. You've got to send it, basically. And you've got to have good traction out at Stavelot, because you're going to carry that speed onto the back straight into Blanchimont and then down to the bus stop. So, with all that in mind, I think it's going to be a very interesting picture at the front of the field. It's going to be Red Bull and Ferrari at the front. I think we can safely assume that. I don't really see Mercedes too much in the fight because of their chassis setup, and I'll come on to that later. I think Red Bull are going to have the speed on the straights, but do Ferrari have a better package for such a long lap? Because their car has been not a match for Red Bull on the straights, but certainly in the corners. And that run from La Source turn 1 to Les Combes at turn 5, it's likely to be about 25 seconds, fully flat out. And the charge out of Stavelot to complete the lap through Blanchimont, and then throwing out the anchors for the bus stop chicane will be a little shorter than the 25 seconds and the opening part of the lap. And these two areas will favour the Red Bull package. We've seen that much this season. The Red Bull package works with a lower downforce setup. It's able to carry really good speed. The Red Bull powertrain's power unit in the back of the car is very powerful. There's a lot of the use of the word power. So yeah, Red Bull will be in a really good position there, and even if they don't find themselves at the front, they'll be able to fight their way through the field quite easily. And with DRS, it's going to be not super powerful, I don't think, but the combination of their car philosophy, their likely setup window, and DRS will make them pretty potent, I think. However, could Ferrari's car, which is able to deal with more downforce slightly more effectively, serve them better through the middle sector, where you might actually find a little bit more time? And it's in those slower corners as well where you're going to find time. So a car that has good downforce, let's say La Source and the bus stop, 2 sets of slow corners, the Ferrari might do better there. And the Ferrari's had good traction as well. We saw in Austria the amount of traction that the Ferrari was able to have really, really paid dividends. But that middle sector, which includes the quick direction change of Les Combes, where you need downforce again, the downhill braking for Rivage, downforce, pull on. You need to be brave in there. That's a corner where the bravest are going to shine. And that chicane in the middle of Fagnes, you're going to need a car that is settled and can change direction quickly without sliding. The Red Bull, no doubt, will carry lots of speed through these corners, but whether it will do so effectively is another matter. And we've seen they've had a little bit of issues with tyres, and such a long lap here. If you gamble and go one lap too long on the tyres and lose them halfway around the lap, you can be struggling. You lose heaps of time. But also, if you pit too early and you haven't used enough of them, yes, you'll have fresh tyres, but then you've got to manage them. And also, your opponent could maybe use that pace right at the end of their in-lap and make the difference. It could all be quite close in terms of strategy. And also, another point to remember, having that speed in the middle sector and the traction, if the Ferrari is able to bring better pace onto the straights, carrying more cornering speed, even if it can't quite reach the top speed of the Red Bull, the Ferrari might be able to just bridge the gap and stop the Red Bull being able to catch them in race trim. And I think Paul Ricard actually gives us an insight into how the landscape might look between F1's two fastest teams in Belgium this weekend. Remember, Ferrari grabbed pole position in France. Okay, Carlos Sainz did tow Charles Leclerc along the back straight as he had a grid penalty to serve anyway. But it did allow the Monegasque to set himself up at the front of the grid. And the debate overnight raged between Paul di Resta, Nico Rosberg and Johnny Herbert on Sky F1. And many felt that Verstappen, in second, was in the better position. With the combined power of DRS and the Red Bull's operational window, that would take the Dutchman to another win. Now, of course, we know Verstappen did win that race. But that was only after Leclerc's prancing horse bucked him off into the barriers. It could be then that a similar picture forms in Spa, but I wouldn't actually be surprised if the Ferrari at the front is Carlos Sainz. He's been driving pretty well in recent races. Leclerc, though, is phenomenally fast, so never ever count him out. It's unlikely we'll see a Ferrari front row, but they might pull a towing strategy. Depending where they decide to pull it, it might be worth doing it in the final sector, but then you've got to manage the rest of the lap. So probably through the first sector, especially down to Les Combes, you might see Ferrari try a towing strategy like they did in Paul Ricard, because Sainz is almost certainly definitely out of championship contention, so it would make sense for them to use him in that way again to make sure that Leclerc gets to the front. And his championship hopes are extremely slim at best. Verstappen, though, he won this race last year, so yeah, but obviously he was born in Belgium, his mother is Belgian. He's going to have a lot of support there, and then we go to Zandvoort, so it's basically 2 home races in a row for Max Verstappen. So he's going to be highly motivated to continue his winning streak and make it 3 in a row for the second time this season. It's going to be difficult, though, because the Ferrari package is strong, and I think it's well suited to the Spa circuit. But as we've seen all season, that Red Bull, if you put it in position to overtake, it just delivers. Gone are the days where Red Bull were the sitting ducks on the straights. They are now the force to be reckoned with. But exactly how the competitive picture looks this weekend is going to be interesting. And Ferrari's strategical philosophy, how that plays out, given their latest debacle in Budapest, that is going to be perhaps even higher on the questioning ladder of everybody, because they've come under fire and Mattia Binotto seems to want to put his head in the sand and not confront it or not admit to it in public. How they're dealing with it behind closed doors is anybody's guess, because after all, this is Ferrari. But it's going to be mighty close. I think we're in for a really interesting battle. Hopefully, it's a really exciting race because we've had some exciting races, but we want to see Leclerc and Verstappen go toe to toe more regularly than they have done in recent races for various reasons. Because we could be having a fantastic title battle. We're not, but I suppose the next best thing is making sure that we have 2 drivers, maybe 3 drivers, maybe 6 drivers right at the front and giving it everything to win and giving us some really exciting action. So if it's Ferrari and Red Bull at the front, how is the rest of the field going to look? Who's going to struggle? Who's going to go really well at Spa? So on the struggle bus, let's start there. Mercedes. Yes, they claim to have fixed their bouncing issues, but the car has lacked straight line performance, and with the drag efficiency needed in the first and third sectors, Mercedes' strength in Sector 2 might not be enough to shield them from the rest of the midfield. It certainly won't be enough to close the gap to the front 2. Could be totally wrong on this. They might have found a solution over the summer break, although they weren't. Obviously, they had to take two weeks to shut down the factories. They wouldn't have had that much time to find radical solutions, but it's going to be interesting to see quite where Mercedes fall, because they were super competitive in Hungary by their standards this season. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, Mercedes are, a championship-winning outfit. They are 8-time consecutive constructors champions. They expect to be at the front. So quite where this circuit has them fall in the competitive pecking order is going to be quite interesting. I can make a case for them being third fastest. We could see them maybe be right in there, but you could also see them actually being gazumped by a couple of other teams who I'll come to a little bit later on in this segment. So it's going to be interesting to see quite where Mercedes fall in that. And joining them on the struggle bus are McLaren for similar reasons, because they've got a car that lacks that straight line performance. Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo don't have as much performance to count on in their McLaren, and they could find themselves at the mercy of Alpine, their rivals for 4th in the Constructors' Championship. And the third team on the bus heading to Slowsville is AlphaTauri. The AT03 has been difficult to get performance from this year, and I can see Gasly and Tsunoda going another race without points. They've actually gone 5 races with no points at that team, and they sit 8th in the Constructors' standings as we head to Spa, which is a massive surprise considering the trajectory that the team has been on over the last few seasons. So 2020, of course, they had the victory with Gasly. 2021, they performed really well. At points, they were third fastest car. This year, the car has not been as effective. Gasly has struggled to get hold of it. Tsunoda's done okay, but then he's had a bit of a wobble recently. Things are kind of slipping away for AlphaTauri. But who's going to have a good weekend? Alpine are going to have a good weekend, even if no one wants to drive for them. Ocon and Alonso are in the car this weekend, and I think they'll have the performance to sort of paper over cracks in terms of what's going on off the circuit. It'd be nice for them to get back to on-track action. They've already shown this year how slimly they can run their aerodynamic wings settings in Baku, where the car was basically 4 wheels and a tub with a few bits of carbon fibre attached to the front and the back. And we saw it in Canada as well, where obviously, of course, Alonso got himself onto the front row, but then they fell back in the race. And also I'm tipping Alfa Romeo to be quite good this weekend. They've had a fruitful opening to 2022. They've had a little bit of a tail off in the few races before the summer break. But compared to where they were over the last couple of seasons, vastly improved, much better performance. They've got 2 drivers who are driving very, very nicely. So in terms of Alpine, what I think they could expect to challenge for, as much as a second row slot, if, let's say, Sergio Perez doesn't quite get things together in qualifying because he's had his struggles recently, eliminated in Q2 in Budapest, and we know just how fast Alonso is over one lap, and Ocon has been delivering some sensible laps in qualifying too, but at least a place on the third row given the Mercedes lack of straight line speed and also their lack of single lap pace in qualifying, Hungary aside. I think that was a bit of an anomaly. But of course, this is Spa. It could rain at some point. There could be a rainstorm, bubble up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden the whole competitive order is just pitched on its head. And that could put anyone anywhere. And we've seen, obviously, Alonso, as I said, in Canada perform heroics in the wet and get on the front row. You know, he could go one better in Spa and take pole position. Who knows? It's Fernando Alonso. No one quite knows what he's going to do next. Now, Alfa Romeo, obviously, I've said I'm tipping them for a good weekend, and they've been beset by unreliability across the whole start of the season, mostly on Zhou Guanyu's side. Valtteri Bottas has had a couple of DNFs, but they've consistently been able to challenge around the top 10, so whether they're just inside it or just below it, but they've not really been out in Q1, you know, looking completely adrift. Zhou has had a couple of Q1 eliminations, but he's found his feet now, and that was always going to be the case. He's going to take a few races to sort of get his feet under the table and learn from Bottas, who's just been completely refreshed. And I think the Finn will be able to pick up some helpful points for the Swiss team this weekend. All right, let's have a little bit of fun to finish off this preview episode. Let's play a little bit of Guess Who, a great board game that children can play they used to play when I was growing up at least. A board game's even still a thing. I see Monopoly from time to time in the shops, but that's, of course, a classic. It's like Belgium. It's the Spa-Francorchamps of board games, is Monopoly. So we've got seats still available for 2023. We've got one at McLaren. We've got one, of course, at Alpine. We've got one at Alfa Romeo, one at Haas, one at AlphaTauri, and one at Williams. So I'm going to go in reverse order, because then I can get to the ones that you all want to talk about. The ones that are the ones making the headlines at the moment, of course, Alpine and McLaren. So I'm going to start with Williams. And I think that Alex Albon is going to be partnered with Logan Sargeant for 2023. Well, at least I hope he is. The American has been driving fantastically for Carlin in Formula 2. He's had a rough couple of races ahead of the summer break, but he is absolutely driving the best he's ever driven, because he almost beat Oscar Piastri, remember, to the Formula 3 championship in 2020. It was just a little bit of unfortunate circumstance that denied him. I think he was taken out of the last race in Mugello, which allowed Piastri to then get the result he needed, because Sargeant was out of the way. But he's showing his class again in Formula 2. It could be a year too early for Sargeant to make that step up. And another run at the F2 title next year could do him some good. But he's showing his class again, and he's absolutely, I think, the real deal. He could be the next American hope in Formula 1, depending on what happens with the likes of Colton Herta and Pato O'Ward and the guys coming over from IndyCar. And I suppose that will sort itself out as well. But I really hope Logan makes the step up. I'm tipping him for this for next season, but if not this season, 2024. And if it isn't 2023 for Logan, I reckon it'll be Nick de Vries in at Williams for next year. AlphaTauri, they're going to keep Yuki Tsunoda, because aside from perhaps Liam Lawson, I don't see them promoting any other of their junior drivers. Jehan Daravala has struggled. Dennis Hauger hasn't done as well as hoped with Prema either. We won't talk about Yuri Vips too much. There's not really anyone other than Liam Lawson, and he's a bit up and down with Carlin at the moment. So I think Yuki Tsunoda is safe for at least another season at AlphaTauri. At Haas, there's been a little bit of debate about whether Mick Schumacher is actually staying with the Ferrari Driver Academy. I feel like he will. He's done a good enough job. He's improving, and let's face it. Last year was a learning year. The teammate he had was not up to scratch. This year he's had a competitive car, a teammate that can push for him to chase, and of course there was going to be a little bit of learning in terms of the learning curve. Last year would have been gradual. This year it would have been a bit steeper, I think. And I think we're seeing Mick come through that now, and he's delivering those performances when the car is capable of it. And let's be honest, Haas will fluctuate in terms of their competitive position. That's just how the F1 midfield works. It always has done. But I think Mick is doing enough to warrant continuing in Formula 1, and Haas, unless they're going to pick Logan Sargent and put an American driver in there, they might as well keep Mick Schumacher. Alfa Romeo, Zhou Guanyu will stay with Valtteri Bottas. I know this is all apart from maybe Logan Sargent, a little bit samey, a little bit dull in terms of my choices, but this is just how I feel about these drivers. I don't see the teams having any reason or need to change. Zhou has done very well, but outperformed expectations. Okay, the bar might have been a little bit low because people might not have expected that much from him, so it's easy to exceed expectations if you've got much lower expectations, but I feel he's exceeded them so much. He's doing a fantastic job, and he's learning. He's doing a really, really good job alongside Bottas, who he's learning from. So absolutely the man to continue at Alfa Romeo. So let's get into the juicy section. Alpine and McLaren. So Daniel Ricciardo, who has underperformed compared to expectations at McLaren over the last 18 months. It's been a real disappointment. And Oscar Piastri, who is perhaps the hottest property in motorsport right now. Outside of, obviously your Leclerc and Hamilton and Russell and Norris and Verstappen. Without diving too much into the whole contractual debate, I think Daniel Ricciardo is going to stand firm and stay at McLaren. He's going to give it one more year, I think, because this is a new generation of car. They're getting there with it. His performance is up and down, but the car's performance is also up and down. Lando Norris has admitted to not driving his natural style with the car, so you can see that both drivers are having to compromise. And of course, it might just be that Ricciardo has a feel that is so, so his feel, the window of his feeling with the car is smaller than that of Norris's, is what I'm trying to say. And especially on the brakes, it's a very sensitive thing, I'd guess, for a driver. Well, I don't guess, I know it is. So if you've got the confidence in the brakes, then you can get on them later. You can brake a little bit harder, turn the car. It just opens up that performance window a little bit more for you. And I think Ricciardo's dependence on that situation is higher than others. And you see drivers like Lewis Hamilton are supreme on the brakes, and that takes massive confidence. And if you took away that braking confidence from Lewis, he also would be less effective. Of course, there are other things that a driver can do to work around those issues, and I feel like Ricciardo is just inching towards it. He's probably if he stays, he'll probably still be beaten by Norris. But I think that will show just how good Lando Norris is, because he's beaten Ricciardo and beaten him comfortably 3 years in a row. So, of course, if Ricciardo stays, that means Piastri goes to Alpine. And I think this is going to be a marriage of convenience. It will be a 1 year deal, and then Piastri will say, well, all the doors are open then for Piastri. He can, if Ricciardo stays for the third year of his contract, McLaren don't have to pay him off, and they can just replace him with Piastri. Or Piastri can settle in at Alpine and actually find that he's in a good spot and can partner Ocon for the future. So that's how I feel that's all going to shake out. I feel Ricciardo is the cork in the bottle here, and whether he stays at McLaren or not is a big We all know it is the big influence over where Piastri is going to end up. If he stays, I feel Alpine will keep their man. I think the contractual situation will just be out the window then, because there'll be nowhere else for Piastri to go unless he wants to go to Williams or he wants to go to AlphaTauri. But Alpine would be the best seat available remaining to him, and it would make sense for him to go there, or stay there even. But it might be a marriage of convenience, an unhappy one for a year. But who knows? Stranger things have happened in Formula 1 than a driver going to a team unhappy and then finding out that he actually is very happy there with the performance of the car once he realises it's, top 4 in the championship and potentially, if they improve it, able to get on the podium. But, that's just what I think the remaining seats are going to be looking like in 2023. Where do you think these drivers will find themselves in 2023? Let me know with a comment below. And so the checkered flag is waving on another episode. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to the F1 season coming back to us in Spa, one of my favourite tracks, as I said earlier. And if you like what I do, leave a review. If I rocked the mic, give it a like. You can find my race predictions on my blog site at 5redlights.wixsite.com/5RL blog. I'll be covering the F1 and F2 weekends on f1chronicle.com and insidef2.com this weekend. I'll be back next week with the Belgian Grand Prix cap. And so enjoy the racing this weekend. I'll see you when the 5 red lights go out.